Mike Diaz here from LMS Logistics Solutions. Welcome back to the channel. We're talking about drayage today. Let's get to it. So we're discussing drayage, port operations. This is the task of grabbing a container at the ports and bringing it to the warehouse. So there's a few things that we're discussing today is productivity, the ports, and pricing on drayage, but mostly we want to touch on pricing and the problems with pricing right now. So the ports have always been terrible in Los Angeles. They're one of the world's busiest ports. And throughout the years, they've been trying to clean up their operations. But as we know, you solve a problem in one area, you create a problem in another area. There's a tool that needs to go with the trucker, and that's a chassis. And a chassis is just a bare frame with wheels on it. Then the container goes on top of the chassis. At one point in time, it was a very lenient operation and there was an abundance of chassis. But now there's a chassis pool that manages that. So truckers have to go make a second line, which is get online for a chassis. The chassis is inspected on the way out after the trucker is hooked up to it. So what happens, and a lot of times, a trucker can grab a bad chassis with maybe a flat tire or whatever have you, with a default, maybe a light is out. So if the trucker grabbed a bad chassis, which is up to chance, he has to take it to the problem area and then get online again for a good chassis. So he grabs a chassis, he gets to the terminal. So now most terminals are operating by appointments and appointment only. And we already know that it's really difficult when it comes to trucking. Traffic, you have strikes, you have Department of Transportation, CHP. These guys are hovering around the ports like bees, and they're slowing down operations. So anyway, trucker has probably about a 3-minute window to get to this window, and then you add probably about a mile-long line at the port entrance. They're expecting that driver to get to that window within a 5-minute window. Now, the horror stories that I hear are drivers getting into physical altercations when it comes to chassis at the beginning of the line. People are skipping each other. These guys are just battling like gladiators at the port entrances trying to get into these terminals. So all these things, and now even with empties need appointments to go in as well. You just can't take an empty back to the port and terminate it. So there's a lot of times where the ports also change to a dual transaction. And what does that mean? If you're going into a specific terminal, they want you, in order for you to pick up a full container, you have to be bringing in an empty to that specific terminal. And in order to take an empty, if you're doing an export, you got to be dropping off a full. And we already know we have 30-something odd customers that are moving from different terminals. We don't define who's coming out of what terminal. They're all coming out of different terminals. So if you're just going off of chassis and the chassis pools and at the ports, you're not going to get anything done. You have to purchase your own chassis. And that's a reason why rates also go up. But the availability of truckers is really nowadays close to null. The new generations don't want to drive trucks. The older generations are getting old, they're getting tired. So you're finding less qualified drivers and less drivers that are willing to do the work. You also have a shortage of trucks. So California is the only state in the U.S. to have a clean air truck rule. So these trucks require a filter. So anything after a certain year, those trucks you can't even. Anything before a certain year, you can't even drive those trucks here in California. And then you're dealing with DEF fluid, and these filters even mess up engines. But it's a California requirement for the Clean Air Initiative. So you're looking at a shortage of vehicles, you're looking at a shortage of drivers, you're looking at a shortage of equipment. Then you have a 100% spike in activity. Then you add COVID to it, which was a shutdown, and which created a crazy ripple effect. There were some positives that came out of all this chaos, and some not so good things that also came out. But pricing has been affected greatly. So about 7 years ago, we probably used to pay $350 to $400 to bring in a container into the Ontario area. Nowadays, you're looking at $900 to $1,000 going into Ontario. Out here in San Bernardino, we're getting quotes from 1,800 to 2,400. Now here's a problem that we here at LMS are trying to solve internally. Most of your drayage is being conducted by brokers. Okay, these are freight forwarders that are giving you the full shebang, the full service. When you select the option to do a door-to-door pull, your broker is hiring the ocean carrier to bring your container overseas, and then either the ocean carrier will hire the trucker, or your broker will hire the trucker. Now remember, when your broker hires a trucker, that trucker is charging him $900, $1,000, then they're charging you an extra $200, $300, $400, $500, $600. You don't know how much they're charging you. So you got these guys that are they're acting like the middleman, but they're also taking a big fat chunk.
So on that one load that picks up tomorrow morning in Atlanta and delivers, or he can pick it up tonight, whatever, delivers the next business day, the profit of 12, 20.
And most of your strikes, the driver strikes, are geared towards that. They understand.
And so right now, I guarantee you, shippers are paying more money than they've ever paid. But what are brokers doing? They aren't putting that number back to the owner operator. They're keeping that for themselves. Yeah.
And they know that brokers are taking the majority of the share when it comes to transportation and drayage, and they're not having to pay fuel, maintenance, nor do any of the work. So that is a huge problem that we're trying to solve here at LMS. We're trying to make the truckers a little bit more money. That way they're enticed to do the job. Hopefully that'll create a ripple effect and bring in more truckers to the industry. And then we're trying to save you, the customer, money. So we're trying to cut out the middleman with the broker when it comes to the drayage operation. Communication will flow a lot better. Things will be, these guys, your truckers will make a little bit more money. And you, the customer, will save a little bit more money. And then the operation itself will be a little bit more responsible. So as there's more layers and layers and layers of responsibility, you have a lot of excuses that get out there. So for you, it's, well, we don't have any chassis, or there's no appointment availability. And a lot of times this is true, but they also use this to their advantage when they miss an appointment. They use this to their advantage when they haven't managed their workflow correctly, and now they're trying to service another customer that's last minute instead of you that probably should have been done today. So we're seeing a lot of these changes are impacting in a negative way, and it's mostly the rates. So here at LMS, we are looking to create a software that links up the driver with the customer direct, and that even results in a faster paying load for the drivers. So you're seeing some of the issues. That's some issues in pricing, and why pricing is so high right now. Productivity is a big factor. Availability of equipment, drivers, qualified drivers, and people. These guys need special TWIT cards to get in and out of the ports. So it's just a nasty operation overall. Thanks for tuning in on our latest for talking about drayage. We discussed a few things when it pertains to pricing, operations, productivity. Just so you know which way the ports of LA are going, that's something that you need to consider with your supply chain, because it is terribly more expensive to get through that damn port. And once those fees start piling on, those fees of per diems, demerges because of the operation, that's your bottom line, because we are not responsible for that. So consider that. If you got any questions, comments, concerns, send me an email. My email's in the description below. Share this to anybody that you know that may need this. And until then, we'll see you. Mike out.